Will Trump redefine alliances? Is the NATO nexus still relevant? Is the US in, out, or somewhere in between NATO? Where does Europe stand? United or divided? Is Russia rising as an ally, adversary, or both? Will Ukraine be caught in the geopolitical crossfire? Are economic imperatives shifting towards development at the cost of defense? Who will lead in the new world order? Is alliance economics equitable or lopsided? Is NATO still the guardian of peace, or is it a catalyst for conflict? As the winds of change sweep across the global landscape, former President Donald Trump's reconsideration of the US's role in NATO brings to the fore profound questions about the essence of alliances in this new age. Welcome to TFI Global, the antidote to mass delusion. Former President Donald Trump, in discussions about his potential second term in 2024, articulated his openness to two significant policy shifts concerning the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. Firstly, he contemplates the possibility of the United States withdrawing entirely from the alliance. Secondly, if not a complete withdrawal, he indicates a preference towards dramatically diminishing American participation within NATO's framework. Donald Trump's criticisms of NATO aren't recent revelations. He has consistently expressed skepticism regarding the alliance's contemporary relevance, asserting that its structure and purpose have become outdated. Central to his critique is the financial aspect, where he believes that the United States disproportionately shoulders the financial commitments, rendering it a less equitable partnership. Beyond the fiscal concerns, Trump has also cast doubts on the extent of American responsibilities towards NATO, especially concerning the defense of smaller member nations. He hints at a desire to recalibrate these commitments, suggesting that perhaps the US shouldn't be obliged to defend all member states unequivocally. There is increasing speculation, fueled by reports from Trump's policy circles, about the tangible steps he might take to redefine the US's role within NATO. A prevalent theory suggests a departure from the long-standing policy of automatic defense of NATO allies. Instead, the US, under Trump's leadership, might adopt a more discretionary approach, evaluating each situation individually and deciding whether or not to extend military or strategic assistance based on the specific circumstances of the conflict. In understanding these potential shifts, it becomes imperative to delve deeper into NATO's historical context and evaluate its ongoing significance in the contemporary geopolitical landscape. Back in 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, was formed by a group of Western European countries and the United States in response to the growing threat of the Soviet Union. The alliance's goal was to keep the Soviets at bay, ensure the continued presence of American troops in Europe, and, prevent Germany from becoming a military power again. Over the decades, NATO has expanded to include 31 member countries, including former Soviet republics like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. This expansion has been a major source of tension between Russia and the West, with Russia viewing NATO's eastward expansion as a threat to its security. In 1993, former Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev said that he felt the West had taken for a ride when they promised not to expand NATO eastward. Gorbachev believed that the West had not kept its end of the bargain, and that NATO's expansion had contributed to the collapse of the Soviet Union. During NATO's nascent stages, the axis of its concerns was unequivocally the Soviet Union. However, the geopolitical tectonics shifted post the Soviet Union's dissolution. Russia's apprehensions, previously centered around the overarching threat of NATO, were now channeled towards the alliance's continual growth towards the east. Fast forward 7 decades, the world has undergone seismic shifts. The monolithic Soviet Union has disintegrated. The formidable Warsaw Pact is relegated to history. The iconic Berlin Wall stands no more, and Germany, having transitioned from its turbulent past, now maintains amicable ties with its continental peers. Yet amidst this transformative backdrop, the United States, flanked by its 30 NATO allies, continues its association under the same alliance. This longevity and persistence lead one to ponder, does NATO in today's context still stand as the bulwark of international peace as originally envisaged, or in light of the ever-evolving global dynamics, does it paradoxically serve as an impediment to harmony and cooperative diplomacy? Trump's contention with NATO predominantly revolved around the theme of financial contribution, particularly in terms of defense spending benchmarked against the GDP. An assessment of the numbers elucidates this concern. In the fiscal year 2020, the US committed a substantial 3.7% of its GDP towards defense. This commitment conspicuously outpaces the contributions of the other 30 NATO member states. For comparison, the combined average of NATO's European nations in conjunction with Canada amounted to just 1.77% of the GDP. This glaring disparity in contributions has been a cornerstone of Trump's grievances. This leads us to speculate on the potential policy directions Trump might have steered the US towards vis-a-vis NATO. One drastic avenue is the full-scale withdrawal of the US from NATO. Such a decision would unequivocally destabilize the alliance, given the United States' paramount military and strategic might. Its exit would not only diminish NATO's strength, but also broadcast a stark message globally that the traditional commitment of the US in defending its allies is waning or perhaps altogether obsolete. A US departure from NATO could fundamentally jeopardize the cohesion and efficacy of the alliance. Beyond just weakening NATO, it could potentially herald its disintegration. This would underscore a clear pivot in US foreign policy, signaling a transition from its erstwhile role as a global sentinel to a more insular, domestic-focused stance. It resonates with Trump's consistent emphasis on domestic job creation, economic revitalization, and a general propensity towards inward-looking policies rather than upholding the mantle of the world's guardian. However, a complete withdrawal is but one option. An alternative approach that Trump could champion involves pressuring NATO members to augment their defense expenditures. He has been vociferous in his calls for NATO nations to escalate their defense spending, targeting a minimum threshold of 2% of their GDP. His rationale stems from the belief that the US is shouldering an inordinate financial burden for NATO's upkeep. In his view, allies should be more proactive, investing robustly in their own defense frameworks and thereby reducing the asymmetry in contributions. A third conceivable policy trajectory involves a recalibrated engagement with NATO. While not advocating for a full exit, Trump has hinted at a desire for the US to redefine its role within the alliance. Specifically, he has expressed reservations about the US being unconditionally tethered to the defense of any NATO member facing aggression. Trump's concerns revolve around the ambiguities inherent in the collective defense clause. He fears that this could inadvertently entangle the US in a conflict, especially if the adversary is a formidable nuclear power such as Russia. It is vital to recognize that the world has evolved into a multipolar landscape. This transformation is further exemplified by the ascendancy of entities like BRICS and the emergence of regional groupings that have begun reshaping the dynamics of international relations. In this shifting geopolitical arena, it becomes increasingly untenable to sideline or exert undue pressure on powers like Russia, a nation that commands significant influence both regionally and globally. The old paradigms of exerting dominion or ostracizing nations are no longer feasible. Furthermore, the United States financial landscape has endured significant strain owing to prolonged military engagements and an expansive defense budget. This fiscal strain, juxtaposed with pressing domestic needs, underscores the urgency of redirecting focus. It is imperative that the US prioritize the revitalization of its domestic economy and the creation of jobs to ensure sustained growth and stability. In light of these realities, Trump's suggestions resonate with a pragmatic approach towards foreign policy, one that aligns with the changing contours of global politics and the pressing socio-economic needs of the nation.